Security guard assaults black woman's son. She makes the entire mall pay the price. The slap echoed through the atrium of Brookhaven Galleria like a thunderclap. Malik Jackson, a 13-year-old black boy with bright eyes and a skinny frame, stumbled backward, one hand gripping his phone, the other pressed against his cheek. Shoppers froze mid-step. A few gasped. The man who struck him, Rick Matson, a heavy-set white mall security guard in his late 40s, stood over him, red-faced, breathing hard. "I told you not to move," Rick barked, jabbing a finger into the air. "Didn't I say I was going to search that bag?" Malik looked up, dazed. "I didn't steal anything," he whispered. Rick snatched the boy's tote bag from the ground and dumped its contents onto the tile. A paperback book, some Sour Patch Kids, a receipt from GameStop, and a bottle of hand sanitizer. No stolen goods, no theft, just a kid. Phones started recording. "Leave him alone, man," someone muttered from the growing circle of onlookers. Rick ignored them. "You match the description," he growled. "That's probable cause." Malik's lip trembled, his breathing quickened. Then, cutting through the chaos, a calm, commanding voice rose behind the crowd. "That's my son." Heads turned. Alicia Jackson stepped forward, heels tapping like gunshots against the floor. Her expression was unreadable, cool, composed, like stone pulled tight over fire. She was tall, in her late 30s, skin a deep caramel brown, dressed in simple jeans, a gray hoodie, and a black coat. Rick's posture shifted slightly. "Ma'am, I had reason to believe your son was—" "Being harassed," Alicia cut in. "Being assaulted in a public space by an overzealous, untrained man with a badge." Rick stiffened. "I'm doing my job." She stepped between him and Malik, placing her hand gently on her son's back. "No, you're projecting your bias." "I'm calling the police," Rick snapped. Alicia's eyes locked onto his. "Please do." There was something about the way she said it, not panicked, not scared, almost inviting. Rick hesitated. People were still recording. Malik clutched his mother's hand. "Let's go," she said softly to her son. Then, louder for everyone to hear, "We don't need to scream for justice when we can serve it in court." And just like that, she walked out of the mall, head high, phone in hand, dragging behind her a storm no one saw coming. 2 hours later, in a modest, 2-story house a few blocks from the mall, Alicia sat across from Malik at the kitchen table. He was still shaken, eyes unfocused, his posture hunched. "Tell me how you feel," she said gently, pushing a glass of water toward him. He hesitated. "I feel like I can't breathe." Alicia's throat tightened. "It's okay to be angry." "I wasn't doing anything, Mom. I was just standing there." "I know." He looked up at her, voice cracking. "Why did he hit me?" Alicia took a deep breath. "Because people like him have been taught that black boys are threats, even when they're just waiting outside a store." Malik's shoulders slumped. "I don't want to go to the mall anymore." Alicia's jaw clenched. "Then we'll make sure no other kid has to feel like you did today." Back in the mall, Rick sat with his supervisor in a back office, nursing a Red Bull and ranting. "She pulled that card on me," he muttered. "You know the kind, the ones who think they're above the rules. Probably has some lawyer friend or something." His supervisor, Kevin Branson, a wiry man with thinning hair and a perpetually nervous twitch, checked his email without looking up. "Just keep your head down. They'll forget about it by next week." Rick scoffed. "Like hell they will. Bet she's already trying to post videos and cry racism." Kevin's phone buzzed. He stared at it, then frowned. "What?" Rick asked. Kevin turned the screen. "We've got media requests already, and one from a civil rights lawyer." "Wait, what?" Kevin's eyes widened. "And not just any lawyer. Alicia Jackson." Rick blinked. "Who?" Kevin looked like he'd seen a ghost. "You really don't know who she is?" Rick shook his head. Kevin swallowed. She's not just some lawyer. She used to be a senior official at the Department of Justice, Civil Rights Division. She prosecuted 2 state police departments. She took down the Fulton County corruption ring. Rick went pale. "Oh," Kevin whispered. "You messed up." Later that night, Alicia sat at her desk, fingers moving quickly over her laptop. She wasn't filing a police report. She was building a case. Tab by tab, she pulled up records. Past civil complaints against mall security, customer reviews referencing hostile treatment, employment lawsuits settled quietly out of court. One by one, she documented it all. The mall wasn't just careless, it was a pattern. Her eyes paused on one detail, a mother's blog post from 6 months ago. Her teenage son was thrown out of the same mall by Rick. No video, no witnesses, just bruises and fear. Alicia clicked Save. Then she opened a new folder on her desktop. She labeled it Brookhaven Reckoning. She turned to Malik's room. He was asleep, curled in a blanket, one hand still wrapped protectively around the GameStop receipt Rick had dumped onto the floor. Alicia stared at him. "You're not going to grow up afraid," she whispered in her mind. "Not if I can help it." She closed her laptop. Tomorrow the mall would wake up to hell, and this time it wouldn't come screaming. It would arrive dressed in quiet precision, with facts, names, dates, and legal firepower. It would arrive with Alicia Jackson. The next morning, the Brookhaven Galleria buzzed as usual. Shoppers poured in. Background music floated through the air. No one noticed the calm before the storm, except for Rick. He sat nervously in the security booth, his eyes flicking toward the monitors. Coffee in one hand, sweat pooling at his collar. He tried to distract himself by watching teens loiter by the food court. But something felt wrong. Across the mall, banners still hung from the atrium rafters, stores still opened. But behind the scenes, phones were ringing non-stop. Corporate emails flagged phrases like civil rights violation and pending litigation. The video of Rick slapping Malik had gone viral overnight. Over 2 million views and climbing. Hashtags like #JusticeForMalik and #Brookhaven. Racism trended in Atlanta and beyond. At 11:14 a.m., Rick's supervisor, Kevin, burst into the booth, face pale. "They're here." "Who?" Rick asked, heart pounding. Kevin didn't answer. He stepped aside. Alicia Jackson walked in. She wasn't alone. Behind her were 2 attorneys, a cameraman from Channel 9 News, and someone Rick recognized from the mayor's advisory board. Alicia was dressed sharp in a navy blue pantsuit, heels clicking softly, calm as ever. She held a manila folder. Her eyes scanned the room like she'd been there before. "Mr. Matson," she said coolly. Rick stood. I was told I wasn't supposed to speak without legal." "You don't need to speak," Alicia cut in. "I'm not here to chat." She slid the folder onto the desk. Kevin reached for it, hands shaking. "What is this?" "A formal notice of civil litigation, filed this morning. You'll see my son's name on page 2. Kevin flipped it open, eyes darting. You're suing the mall?" "No," she said. "I'm suing the mall, the security company, and Mr. Matson personally." Rick's throat went dry. The cameraman zoomed in. Alicia turned to the lens. "My son was assaulted, publicly humiliated, and racially profiled by a man who represents this mall," she said. "But this isn't just about Malik. It's about every black child who's been treated like a suspect before they're seen as human." Kevin stammered, "We didn't approve cameras." "You don't need to. This is a public space." Rick finally found his voice. "Look, I didn't know who you were. If I had, I never would have—" "You mean if I had been wearing a suit instead of a hoodie?" Alicia asked. "Or if my son had been white?" He swallowed. "I've prosecuted officers for less," she added quietly, "and I won't let this go." Later that afternoon, back at Alicia's home office, the strategy session began. Malik sat nearby, listening as his mother and her legal team dissected every angle. A woman named Carmen, a fast-talking civil rights attorney from D.C., paced as she spoke. "We push for discovery on every complaint against that security firm over the last 5 years. If they settle quietly, we win. If they fight, we still win. This will get national attention." "I want more than money," Alicia said. "I want that guard fired. I want a written apology from the mall. I want mandatory bias training for every staff member." "And what about press pressure?" asked Sean, another member of the team. "I've already spoken to 3 outlets," Alicia replied. "They're holding coverage until we go live." Malik looked up. "Why are you doing all this?" Alicia met his eyes. "Because it's not just about you. It's about everyone who came before you and didn't have someone to fight for them." He nodded slowly, then added, "Can I come with you next time?" She hesitated. "Why?" "Because I want to see what justice looks like." Her smile was soft, proud, and pained. That evening, Rick sat alone in his apartment, scrolling through hate comments. Racist, coward, predator. He tried to post a video explaining his side, but deleted it before uploading. The truth was, he had no defense. Not anymore. His phone buzzed again. Unknown number. He answered cautiously. "Hello," a woman's voice replied. Calm, cold. "Mr. Matson, this is Elise Monroe from the Georgia State Bar Association. We'd like to schedule a meeting regarding a complaint filed by Alicia Jackson." He went still. "You may want to retain counsel," she added before hanging up. Rick dropped the phone. It bounced on the carpet. Then silence. Back at home, Alicia tucked Malik into bed. He stared at the ceiling, wide-eyed. "Do you think he's scared now?" he asked. She brushed a curl from his forehead. "Probably." Malik smiled faintly. "Good," she chuckled. "Let's aim for justice, not revenge." "Okay," he whispered. But as Alicia walked back into the hallway, she allowed herself one quiet, satisfied thought. Let them be afraid. Because for once, they should be. The boardroom at Brookhaven Galleria's management office was quiet. Too quiet. No click of pens, no hum of conversation. Just a long rectangular table, leather chairs, and 6 executives who suddenly had no words. Alicia Jackson sat at the far end, calm and composed in a charcoal blazer, flanked by her legal team. She didn't come here to ask. She came to dismantle. A silence stretched thin until the mall's general manager, a balding man named Gerald Townsend, cleared his throat. "Ms. Jackson, before we begin, I want to say—" "No," Alicia interrupted. "We're past apologies. This meeting is to determine how deep your liability runs." Gerald opened a folder. "You've made your point. What are you looking for?" Alicia leaned forward, her voice steady. "Accountability. Not just from your security contractor, from every level of management that ignored the pattern." One of the women on Gerald's team, Susan Lee, shifted uncomfortably. "We don't condone what happened." "But it happened," Alicia cut in. "Not just to my son. I've spoken to 6 other families in the last 48 hours. All of them share the same story. Profiling, intimidation, humiliation. And guess who the common denominator is?" "Rick Matson," Susan glanced at Gerald, who turned pale. "We've placed him on indefinite suspension," Gerald said weakly. Alicia raised an eyebrow. "Suspension? For slapping a child? It's pending investigation. I've already launched one." She slid a printed packet across the table. Inside were depositions, photographs of injuries, time-stamped security footage leaks, and testimonies from prior victims. "I'm not here to negotiate," Alicia said. "I'm giving you a window to fix this before the court forces you to." Gerald's hands trembled as he turned the pages. He paused on one photo, Rick gripping a teenager's hoodie as the boy cried. The timestamp was from 3 months ago. We didn't know, Susan whispered. Alicia looked her dead in the eye. But now you do, and ignorance is no longer an excuse. At the same time, Malik was back at school, but his mind wasn't in class. Word had spread. Some students avoided him, others approached with awkward sympathy, but not everyone was supportive. At lunch, two boys from the basketball team, Trent and Colby, hovered near his table. "Heard your mom's trying to shut the whole mall down," Trent said with a smirk. "Over some candy?" Malik didn't look up. It wasn't about candy. "Whatever, man. Rick's just doing his job. He slapped me." Colby shrugged. "Maybe you were being suspicious." Malik's hand clenched around his tray. He stood slowly. "You ever been hit for no reason?" "No, but—" "Then maybe sit down and shut up before I give you a reason." The cafeteria went quiet. A teacher, Ms. Delaney, rushed over. "Everything okay here?" Malik didn't flinch. "Yeah. Just making it clear I'm not someone to mess with anymore." Later that afternoon, as Alicia picked Malik up, he sat in the passenger seat, fuming. "I hate how they talk to me like I'm the problem." Alicia kept her eyes on the road. "People get uncomfortable when you stop acting like a victim." "I want them to feel what I felt." She parked the car, turned toward him. "Then we don't let rage decide our next move. We use the system against itself." Malik looked skeptical. "The same system that protects people like Rick?" "For now," she said. "But what happens when someone like us learns how to master it?" That night, Alicia appeared on a local news segment with journalist Mariah Blake, who was known for exposing corruption in the private security industry. "This isn't about one guard," Alicia told the camera. "It's about what happens when people with power believe they can act without consequences. The mall failed my son. Now the entire system has to answer." The interview aired just before prime time, and within the hour, everything changed. Corporate headquarters for Urban Shield, the security firm contracted by the mall, released a statement claiming they were cooperating fully and reviewing their training protocols. But then, something unexpected happened. An anonymous employee from Urban Shield leaked internal emails showing management had received multiple warnings about Rick Matson's behavior. Not only that, he had previously been let go from another mall for aggressive conduct, then rehired 6 months later under a new regional manager. The story exploded. National outlets picked it up. Hashtags turned into headlines. Alicia stared at her phone, almost in disbelief. They tried to cover it up. Carmen, her co-counsel, smiled. "Now we nail them with retaliation claims, negligent hiring, and systemic bias." "And the regional manager?" Alicia asked. "Already resigned." Malik walked in, holding his phone. "Mom, you're trending on Twitter." She laughed softly. "That's terrifying." "Some guy called you a courtroom assassin." Alicia grinned. "I like that one." Meanwhile, in a dimly lit bar across town, Rick nursed a whiskey. He stared at the TV above the bar. Alicia's face filled the screen, sharp and unflinching. His phone buzzed. Another anonymous number. "You have 5 days to prepare for deposition," the voice said. "Failure to appear will result in a warrant." He hung up. No friends left, no support. And worst of all, he realized something bone-deep and humiliating. Alicia hadn't even come for revenge. She was after change, and she wasn't going to stop. Back home, Malik sat on the porch with Alicia. "Did you always know how to fight like this?" he asked. "No," she said, "but I learned." "You ever get scared?" "Every time." Malik nodded slowly. "Then I think I'm ready to learn too." Alicia put her arm around him. "Good," she whispered, "because we're just getting started." The following Monday, Brookhaven Galleria was a war zone, not of bullets but of headlines, whispers, and PR spin. Mall executives had finally held a press conference to respond to the public outrage. It was too little, too late. Alicia Jackson was already 2 moves ahead. She stood just outside the courthouse, surrounded by local media, a determined fire in her voice. "We are filing a civil suit today, not just against the individual who assaulted my son, but against Brookhaven Galleria and their contracted security firm for negligence, racial profiling, and reckless endangerment." One reporter shouted, "Ms. Jackson, some are saying your demands are extreme, that you're trying to shut down a mall over one isolated incident." Alicia didn't flinch. "Ask the 6 other families who came forward last week. Ask the young boy still afraid to go near a shopping center. This isn't isolated. It's systemic." Inside the courthouse, Rick Matson sat pale and sweating in a back room with his lawyer, a jittery man named Byron Grant. Rick had traded his security uniform for a wrinkled button-down and a blazer that didn't quite fit. "You told me this was gonna blow over," Rick hissed. Byron adjusted his tie. "I didn't know she had this much reach or strategy. Frankly, I thought she'd take a settlement." Rick's voice dropped. "She wants blood." "No, she wants reform," Byron muttered, flipping through the mounting stack of affidavits. "And if you don't get ahead of this, you'll be the face of every corporate diversity training video for the next decade, if not behind bars." Rick's knee bounced furiously. "She doesn't scare me," he said. "She should," Byron replied, "because she's doing what most victims don't. She's turning the system on itself." Meanwhile, in Alicia's office, her paralegal Devin was sifting through documents when something odd caught his attention. A quiet whistle from the file server, the kind that only came when new digital evidence uploaded from an encrypted tip line. He clicked it open. It was a video. Shaky phone footage, grainy but clear enough. A different mall, a different black teen. Same security uniform, same slap. And the voice on camera. "Rick, no, that's too far," Devin froze. "Alicia, you're gonna want to see this." She watched the clip in silence, lips tightening. "This was from 3 years ago," Devin said. "Urban Shield knew. They had to. Download every version, timestamp it, and prep it for court. We just crossed from negligence to deliberate cover-up." Later that evening, Alicia and Malik shared dinner quietly at their kitchen table. He poked at his mashed potatoes, eyes down. "You okay?" she asked. He nodded, then paused. "Is it okay to say I don't want to be the face of anything?" Alicia looked at him gently. "Of course it is. I didn't ask to be a symbol, I just wanted to buy sneakers. You didn't ask, but now people are listening because of what you went through. You don't owe anyone your story, but if you share it, it could help change things." He looked up. "Even if I'm scared?" "Especially then." There was a long pause, then he whispered, "Okay, then I'll speak." The next day, a twist no one saw coming. Susan Lee, the assistant mall manager who had stayed silent during the boardroom meeting, requested a private meeting with Alicia's legal team. When she arrived, she looked visibly shaken. "I know things," she said, voice trembling, "and I can't keep protecting them anymore." Carmen folded her arms. "Go on." "After Rick was rehired, Gerald asked me to delete complaints from the guest relations database. I was told it would protect the brand and that the legal team would handle anything that came up." "Did you comply?" Alicia asked. Susan hesitated. "I copied everything onto a personal drive first. I didn't trust them." She handed over a flash drive. "There are emails, audio memos, internal messages, even a group chat where they joke about handling aggressive shoppers with force. Most of the people mentioned, Black or Latino." Alicia stared at the drive like it was radioactive. "You realize this could destroy your career," Carmen said. Susan nodded. "And if I stayed silent, I'd be destroying more than that." By Thursday, the dam had burst. Alicia's team submitted an emergency motion to expand the civil case into a class action suit. The flash drive was entered as evidence. Urban Shield's parent company issued a panicked statement of denial. Gerald Townsend, the mall's general manager, abruptly resigned. The mayor's office announced a citywide review of private security licensing, and through it all, Alicia remained composed but resolute. She wasn't doing this for the headlines. She was doing it for every parent who sat in silence, holding a child too afraid to walk into a store. Back at the house, Malik watched the news coverage as photos of Alicia, him, and their legal team flashed across the screen. He turned to his mom, who looked tired but proud. "You made them all pay," he whispered. She smiled softly. "Not enough yet, but we're getting there." And for the first time in weeks, Malik grinned. "I'm ready for whatever comes next." Alicia nodded. "Good, because now it's not just about us. It's about everyone like us." The real battle had just begun. The courtroom buzzed with tension as the class action lawsuit against Urban Shield Security and Brookhaven Galleria began its preliminary hearings. Media vans parked outside like vultures, and the public gallery overflowed with citizens, activists, and community leaders who had watched Alicia Jackson transform from grieving mother to relentless force for justice. Rick Matson was present, seated in the defendant's section beside his visibly overwhelmed attorney, Byron Grant. Behind them, several senior executives from Urban Shield sat stone-faced, whispering nervously. Alicia didn't enter like a victim. She entered like a strategist. Dressed in a tailored navy suit with a silver pendant at her neck, she moved with poise as she joined her legal team. Carmen leaned over and whispered, "Susan Lee is in the building, ready to testify." Alicia nodded. "Good. Let's break the wall wide open." Judge Helena Moore, a sharp-witted black woman with years of experience navigating racially charged cases, called the court to order. As the hearing began, Alicia's lead counsel, Jeremy Powell, wasted no time laying out the case. He projected a slideshow showing timestamps, internal messages, and the newly uncovered group chat among Urban Shield employees. "Your Honor," Jeremy said, "this isn't just a story about one boy being assaulted. It's about a pattern of sanctioned abuse. We have evidence of 7 separate incidents over the past 5 years, none properly addressed, some erased from the record." Judge Moore arched an eyebrow. "And you have proof these deletions were deliberate?" Jeremy clicked to a message log. "This is Gerald Townsend, general manager of the mall, texting Susan Lee. Handle the file before legal sees it. Don't need another race PR nightmare. Time-stamped 4 hours after Malik Jackson's assault." A murmur rippled through the room. Rick shifted uncomfortably in his seat. "Ms. Lee," Judge Moore called, "are you present?" Susan rose slowly from the back of the courtroom and walked to the stand. She was trembling but held her chin up. As she recounted her experience, Alicia studied the jury's faces. Shock, anger, even disbelief. Every word Susan spoke peeled back the carefully constructed facade Urban Shield had maintained for years. "They laughed," Susan said at one point, tears forming in her eyes. "They laughed about using excessive force, called it behavioral correction. They called black kids threat profiles. And when I objected, they froze me out." When the cross-examination came, Urban Shield's defense tried to paint Susan as a disgruntled employee with an axe to grind. But then came the twist Alicia had prepared for. Jeremy stood and said, "Your Honor, we'd like to call a surprise witness to corroborate Ms. Lee's claims." The doors at the back of the courtroom opened, and in walked Raymond King, former head of mall security, Rick's old supervisor. Gasps echoed. Rick froze in his seat. Raymond, a stoic black man in his 50s, with a slight limp and a quiet voice, took the stand. "I was let go from Urban Shield for insubordination," he began, "because I refused to look the other way. I warned them about Rick's behavior. I filed 3 reports. They disappeared." "Why didn't you speak out sooner?" Jeremy asked. "I tried. I sent letters to the mall, the company, even the local paper. No one listened, but when I saw Alicia's son on the news, I knew it was time. Byron, Rick's lawyer, tried to object, but the damage was done. Alicia's team dropped another bombshell. A former HR staffer submitted a whistleblower affidavit stating that executives had instituted unofficial response codes for suspicious individuals, nearly all of which were based on race, age, or dress. The jury looked stunned. Even Judge Moore tapped her pen, clearly weighing the gravity of what had been revealed. During the recess, Alicia stepped outside to find a crowd of supporters holding signs. Justice for Malik. Protect our kids. Stop security abuse. She spotted Malik near the back, wearing a hoodie and sunglasses, trying not to be noticed. He smiled slightly when he saw her. "You good?" she asked. He nodded. "Yeah, but you're doing more than I ever imagined." "We're doing it," she said. "Together." That night, news networks broadcast clips of Susan and Raymond's testimonies. Social media exploded. Hashtags trended. Calls flooded City Hall. Inside Urban Shield's corporate office, executives scrambled. One suggested a quick settlement. Another recommended scapegoating Rick. One even whispered, "Maybe we just declare bankruptcy." But one voice in the room, their CEO, growled through gritted teeth. "No. We fight. She wants to make us look racist? We'll make her look like an angry mother with an agenda." Back at Alicia's home, Jeremy emailed her a confidential tip. It was a leaked internal memo. Coordinate with allies in the press. Discredit Alicia Jackson. Highlight her ambition. Make this personal. She stared at the screen for a long time, then picked up her phone and called Carmen. "We don't just have a case anymore," Alicia said. "We have a war, and Alicia Jackson had no intention of losing." Alicia paced her living room, the glow of muted television coverage flickering across her face. News anchors were dissecting every moment of the courtroom drama: Susan Lee's confession, Raymond King's testimony, and the explosive whistleblower leak. But now, Alicia's name was being dragged across screens in a different way. The smear campaign had begun. "She's a political opportunist," one commentator sneered. "A grieving mother, yes, but also someone with a vendetta." "She's filed 8 lawsuits in her career," another chimed in. "Maybe she's addicted to the spotlight." Alicia muted the TV and turned to Carmen. "You see this?" she said calmly, holding up her phone. "They just posted a blog titled, 'Who is Alicia Jackson Really?' And they dug up my divorce from 8 years ago." "They're trying to rattle you," Carmen said. "It's textbook corporate defense. Smear the plaintiff. But they're too late. The public's behind you." Alicia didn't respond right away. Instead, she stared out the window, mind spinning. "They're not just trying to rattle me. They're trying to bait me into looking angry, unstable, like I'm out for revenge." Carmen looked uneasy. "How do you want to play it?" "I want to beat them at their own game." That afternoon, Alicia and her legal team held a press conference outside the courthouse. The media crowd had doubled since the last hearing. "Urban Shield wants to paint me as a vengeful woman on a crusade," she said into the microphones. "But this case was never about me. It's about a system that protects itself while children like my son are left with trauma. It's about a company that enables assault and calls it protocol. This is about accountability, and I won't be intimidated." Applause erupted. The clip went viral. The next morning in court, the tone had shifted. Judge Moore seemed more stern, the defense more desperate. Byron Grant, Rick's attorney, began a bizarre line of questioning during cross-examination of Raymond King. "Mr. King, are you aware that Ms. Jackson once applied for a position with Urban Shield?" "Objection. Sustained." Byron's face twitched. "Is it true that your termination package was contingent on your silence?" "No," Raymond said firmly. "And I have the paper trail to prove it." Then a surprising turn. Urban Shield's executive VP, Craig Dillard, requested to testify. Their own executive. Alicia narrowed her eyes. Carmen whispered. "This might be the twist we need." Craig took the stand, looking nervous but resolute. "I can no longer, in good conscience, remain silent," he began. "Internal investigations have been buried, complaints redacted, evidence destroyed. I have emails, proof that we were instructed to falsify reports and eliminate anything that could be used against us." The courtroom gasped. Rick visibly panicked, whispering furiously to Byron. Judge Moore leaned forward. "And what motivated this change of heart, Mr. Dillard?" Craig hesitated. "My daughter. She's 14. She saw the footage of Malik being tackled. She asked me if I was proud of my work. I wasn't, and I couldn't lie anymore." Later that night, Alicia received an encrypted email. Attached were files, dozens of them, body cam footage, internal memos, payroll bonuses for guards involved in high-risk neutralizations, and a buried report filed months before Malik's incident, outlining Rick's disciplinary issues, including a prior assault that resulted in a settlement. She immediately called Jeremy and Carmen. "This isn't just a lawsuit anymore, Soa," she said. "This is criminal." The next hearing day, Alicia handed the entire file to Judge Moore in a sealed envelope. "We move to escalate charges," Jeremy announced, "including obstruction of justice and criminal conspiracy to cover up civil rights violations." Urban Shield's legal team erupted in protest. Judge Moore ordered a recess. Outside, Alicia found herself face to face with Rick in the parking garage. Alone. He sneered. "You think you've won, don't you?" Alicia didn't flinch. "I haven't even started." "You're making a mistake. You don't know who I'm connected to." Alicia stepped closer. "No. You made the mistake when you put your hands on my son and thought no one would hold you accountable. I'm not just fighting for Malik. I'm fighting for every mother who's been ignored, silenced, or bought off. So no, this isn't personal. It's justice." She walked away, heels echoing like war drums. That night, Alicia got a call from the district attorney's office. "We've reviewed the files. We're opening a grand jury investigation. You may be called to testify." She hung up. Tears in her eyes. Not of sadness, not even joy, but of righteous fire. It was no longer a courtroom fight. It was a reckoning. The courthouse overflowed with press fans and protesters, their chants echoing down the steps like rolling thunder. Banners reading "Justice for Malik" and "Hold Urban Shield Accountable" waved alongside picket signs showing Rick Matson's face. Alicia stood in the wings of the courtroom, breathing slow and steady, listening to the building tension rise like a kettle ready to boil. Inside, the judge's gavel slammed down as the courtroom reconvened. Rick Matson was no longer just a fired security guard. He was now the central figure in a grand jury investigation into civil rights abuse and obstruction of justice. And today's hearing would include criminal depositions and public testimonies. Carmen leaned toward Alicia. "This is it. We corner him today." Alicia gave a small nod. But she wasn't just thinking about Rick anymore. Her focus had shifted to something deeper, wider, systemic. Her legal team had uncovered documentation proving Urban Shield implemented racially biased security algorithms and performance bonuses for high-volume detainments, mostly targeting black and brown teens. The twist? The algorithm had been co-developed by a third-party tech vendor, a startup funded by several investors, including a local politician running for state office. The rabbit hole had just gotten deeper. Jeremy Powell stood and called their next witness. "We would like to call Miss Alicia Jackson to the stand." A murmur rose across the room. Alicia took the stand in silence. Her composure was ironclad. "Miss Jackson, can you describe the moment you were told your son had been assaulted?" She paused. "I remember everything about that day. The color of the sky, the screech of my phone vibrating against the countertop. I remember hearing Malik's voice trembling, and I remember racing through that mall like my soul was on fire. And when you arrived? He was on the floor, bruised, surrounded by people who did nothing. And Rick Matson? He looked me dead in the eye and said it was protocol. And what did that moment ignite in you? It ignited a mother, a citizen, a woman tired of being told to wait for justice. So I didn't wait. Rick's attorney jumped in, trying to interrupt with an objection, but Judge Moore waved him down. She may continue. I built a case, not just for my son, but for every child treated like a suspect instead of a person. I dug through records they hoped no one would find. I turned whispers into testimony, and now I'm here. Not because of my profession, but because of my persistence. The courtroom erupted in quiet applause, quickly silenced by the judge's gavel. But it was too late. The tide had shifted. Then came the bombshell. Jeremy stood again, voice calm but pointed. Your Honor, we now submit into evidence newly uncovered communications between Urban Shield executives and a political candidate, Marvin Creighton, who is currently running for state senate. The entire room froze. Jeremy continued. These communications show that Urban Shield's policing tech was financially supported by Creighton's office through unofficial channels. In exchange, Urban Shield promised to provide data-driven safety metrics to bolster his public safety record. Judge Moore's jaw tightened. Is Mr. Creighton present? Gasps turned to whispers as Creighton, sitting silently near the back in a navy suit, stood slowly. I'd like to request a recess, Byron, Rick's attorney, stammered. Denied, Judge Moore snapped. Proceed. Jeremy turned toward Rick. We also have records that Mr. Matson received unlisted payments, bonuses routed through Urban Shield's private contractor division, payments that spiked each month following a high-profile detainment involving youth of color. Rick finally lost it. He stood, fists clenched. I was doing my job. They told me who to watch. I was just following the damn guidelines. You mean racial profiling directives? Jeremy fired back. Rick turned to Creighton. Don't let me go down alone. You gave the orders. You wanted headlines. You wanted bodies. The courtroom exploded. Creighton bolted toward the exit, but was stopped by federal agents. The DA, seated quietly at the back, gave the nod. Creighton was arrested on the spot. Judge Moore called for order again. This court will reconvene tomorrow to discuss formal criminal charges. But make no mistake, this system of abuse, from private security to public office, is about to face a reckoning. As the courtroom emptied, Alicia found herself surrounded by reporters. But instead of answering, she looked to Malik, now sitting upright, his confidence grown, his eyes no longer filled with fear. You okay, baby? She asked. I'm proud of you, Mom, he said. No, I'm proud of you, she whispered. That evening, the footage of Rick's outburst and Creighton's arrest ran non-stop on cable news and social media. Public outrage erupted. Activists called for a boycott of Brookhaven Galleria. Civil rights attorneys filed class action suits against similar security programs across the country. And Alicia? She finally breathed. In the quiet of her home, she sat with Malilik and Carmen, sharing Chinese takeout, flipping through hundreds of letters and emails from strangers thanking her. From a mother in Atlanta, you gave me courage. From a retired security guard, you reminded me why I left that job. From a high schooler in Chicago, now I know I matter. Malik looked up from his orange chicken and said, Mom, I know this was all hard, but you didn't just fight for me. You fought for all of us. Alicia smiled. And we're not done yet. Because justice, once awakened, doesn't go back to sleep. Alicia stood in front of the mirror, straightening the collar of her charcoal blazer. The courthouse was buzzing already, but this time the energy was different. This wasn't just the final day of hearings. It was the day judgment would be handed down. Not only on Rick Matson, but on Urban Shield, Marvin Creighton, and the entire machinery that had tried to bury the truth. Downstairs, reporters were already crowding the marble steps, microphones raised like weapons. Across the plaza, protesters had returned, some holding signs bearing Malik's face, others with slogans like "No justice, no business," and "Safety shouldn't be violent." In the courtroom, Judge Moore entered to a tense silence. "All parties, please rise." Alicia glanced over at Rick, seated next to a visibly worn-out Byron. Rick's eyes were hollow, lips tight. His days of smug defiance had drained away. Creighton, still in a Navy suit but now with a court-mandated ankle monitor, sat behind him, flanked by federal agents. "Today," Judge Moore began, "we are not simply deciding the outcome of a lawsuit. We are sending a message to companies that believe profit excuses abuse, to leaders who think influence protects impunity, and to every citizen who's ever been told they don't matter." The courtroom was still, breathless. "I have reviewed the submitted evidence, testimonies, and sealed files. My ruling is as follows." Everyone leaned in. Urban Shield is found liable for civil rights violations, obstruction of justice, and gross negligence in employing Rick Mattson. A fine of $12.5 million is awarded to the Jackson family in damages. Additional funds are allocated to victims of similar incidents, to be identified through a public claim process. Murmurs rippled through the room. "To Mr. Mattson, you are hereby remanded into custody and will face criminal charges, including aggravated assault, falsifying security reports, and participation in a conspiracy to suppress evidence." Rick's head dropped. Finally, no deflection, just silence. "Mr. Creighton," Judge Moore continued, turning toward the disgraced politician, "your case has been referred to the State Ethics Board and the Attorney General's office for review of campaign fraud, conspiracy, and bribery. Until further notice, you are suspended from all political activities." Creighton clenched his jaw, trying to maintain composure. But the damage was done. His political career had unraveled on live television. The gavel slammed once more. "Court is adjourned." Applause erupted. Some wept, some cheered. But Alicia sat still, her hand resting gently on Malik's shoulder. He looked up at her, unsure what came next. She smiled. "You did good, baby. You stayed strong." "I just wanted to go to the mall," he whispered. "I know," she said. "And now kids like you can, without fear." That evening, Alicia appeared on a prime-time interview. The host welcomed her with respectful warmth, then asked the question many wanted answered. "Miss Jackson, how did it feel, facing them, winning not just in court, but in public opinion?" Alicia took a moment before answering. "It wasn't about winning," she said. "It was about stopping something, stopping a cycle that's broken so many families. What happened to Malik could have happened to any kid, any mother. This fight wasn't just ours." "And what comes next?" Alicia looked directly into the camera. "We build. We change policies. We support businesses that do better. And we vote every local election, every policy reform. It starts small, but that's how you move mountains, one voice at a time." By the next morning, Brookhaven Galleria had suspended Urban Shield's contract indefinitely. Other malls followed. An online campaign called Safe Spaces now spread nationally. Alicia was asked to sit on a state advisory panel for youth protection reform. But the most touching moment came a week later. A small girl, no older than 9, approached Alicia outside a bookstore. "Are you the lady who helped the boy at the mall?" Alicia smiled. "Yes, sweetie, that was my son." The girl beamed. "I saw you on my mom's phone. You made them say sorry. I want to be brave like you." Alicia knelt to eye level. "You already are." The girl hugged her tightly. "Tell your son hi." As the sun set behind her, Alicia walked home feeling a weight lift, not because everything was fixed, but because it had started. Justice hadn't come overnight. It hadn't come easy, but it had come because someone refused to back down, to be silenced, or to let fear outweigh love. And maybe, just maybe, that's how it always begins. If this story moved you, inspired you, or made you think, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel. We tell real stories about courage, injustice, and the people who make a difference. And remember, sometimes the biggest changes start with one person saying, "No more."